Hi, everybody. Today is Monday, January 27th, 2025, and our friend Larry Johnson is back with us. Welcome back, Larry.
Thank you for having me.
Larry, let's get started with what leaked from Donald Trump talk with someone in which he's talking about the situation in Gaza. And here is what he said.
General El-Sisi tomorrow, sometime I believe. And I'd like Egypt to take people, and I'd like Jordan to take people. You're talking about probably 1.5 million people, and we just clean out that whole thing. It's over the centuries that's many conflicts. And I don't know. It's something has to happen, but it's literally a demolition site right now. Almost everything's demolished, and people are dying there. So I'd rather get involved with some of the Arab nations and build housing at a different location where they can maybe live in peace. Temporarily, or would they it could be either. It could be temporarily, could be long term.
Yeah. Here is what's your take on the view of Donald Trump?
He's like a jazz musician, man. He's just improvising, playing whatever comes out of his mouth at the time. He hasn't been paying attention to what's actually happening on the ground in Gaza. So we are now 15 months since Israel retaliated for the Hamas attack on October 7th with allegedly the most powerful army in the Middle East. And they were going to destroy Hamas. And what did we see the other day when the 4 Israeli soldiers, the females, were released? They were smiling. They were happy. Some folks try to claim that this was staged. This was, staged in terms of they had a gun to their head. Be happy. Oh, I'm so happy. No, that's not what was going on. It was genuine, and there was even posted on one of the social media platforms them speaking Arabic, and and they were healthy. They weren't raped. Now, since getting released, one of them has gone on and made a video saying that one of the guards was staring at her, and that was rape. I don't think she knows what the meaning of rape is, okay? Looks don't translate into action. But surrounding these 4 women were all these Hamas fighters, the Al-Qassam brigades. And they weren't wearing ragged uniforms. They were brand new. They looked clean. They were well put together. They actually reflected some uniformity. Hence in the army, that notion of wearing a uniform. The weapons they were carrying looked to be in good shape and almost new. And then today, you got 1 million plus Palestinians heading north. They're walking. These people, how they've survived is astonishing. And it's ironic. I haven't heard anybody comment on this, and so that's my job, come up with the irony. Their movement north, movement to freedom again, coincides with the 80th anniversary of the liberation of Auschwitz, when the Russian soldiers came in and freed what was left of the camp inmates. Sort of a fitting commemoration, I would say. So, yeah, Trump can raise it with King Abdullah of Jordan and General al-Sisi in Egypt. And they're going to tell him the same thing they told Obama. There are 2 ways we can do this. No way and no way in hell. Not going to happen. And the Palestinians this isn't just about finding them a nice place to live. Their demonstration today that they are going back to this, as Trump was accurate calling it pure devastation. Nonetheless, it shows that for those people, this is their land. This land is ours, and from their standpoint, God gave this land to them, not to the Zionists. So, I think Trump was, he's always the showman, and he thinks out loud. But I don't think it'll go anywhere.
But what we get from the way that Donald Trump is talking about the conflict is that he really doesn't want that sort of conflict in the Middle East, but he doesn't know how to get rid of it.
Right.
And here is the question: does he really understand that these people are not going to give up on their land? Because they're not, as today I talked with Colonel Jacques Beau, he said that they're not looking for roof. They're literally wanting, they're literally seeking for their roots, not roof. And
Yeah.
here is what they're talking about. As you mentioned, they don't want a new place, as Donald Trump was arguing in that video, a new place with a better life. They want to rebuild their houses in the same land that they have been living for many years.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's what, again, Trump fails to realize that. What's interesting is Trump's intervention with getting the ceasefire in place. It's sort of blown up on Netanyahu and the Zionists, because they were told, the Israeli public had been told now for the last 15 months that, Hamas is destroyed. Al-Qassam is defeated. Oh, so the hostages are not alive. Well, now it looks like most of the hostages are still alive, which is testimony to the ability of Hamas to, have kept them safe. And unlike how the Zionists treat Palestinian prisoners in prisons, where they're subjected to torture and abuse, up to and including physical beatings, the Al-Qassam fighters and there are other Palestinian groups that are holding some of the hostages themselves. They're treating the Israeli hostages because they recognize they're valuable. You can't mistreat the merchandise, so to speak. So this has really created some problems for Bibi Netanyahu. And it'd be one thing if it's just a political issue for Bibi, but he's also got health issues. Reportedly has prostate cancer. They had to put it in a pacemaker, it's reported. And he's got some, family, so Bibi's not having a good 2025. His the Gentile New Year is not treating him well. Then this political pushback that started within the Israeli public, where they're going, hey, wait a second. Not only did we not destroy these people, they're back stronger than ever. And everything that we claimed we had achieved, we haven't. It's there on it. Well, you can see it. You can't hide from the images. So this has set in motion, I guess, a new dynamic that even there's some on the extreme right here in the United States. Alistair Crook had a great article about this the other day. Are coming out and just saying some outrageous, they're accusing Trump and Witkoff. They're choosing Trump of being like anti-Jewish, anti-Semitic. Stephen Witkoff, who's an Orthodox Jew, please. I don't know if he's Orthodox, but he's is reportedly an observant Jew, keeps kosher, and yet they're attacking him. Why? Because they're actually working on a peace agreement, and this is unrelated to what we're talking to. It's not directly related, but it is in the ballpark. It would not surprise me at all that Trump is working a deal with Iran. And because the Netanyahu plan is they want the United States to help them attack Iran. And these crazed Zionists in this country, here in the United States, I'm without explaining how I'm in contact with some of these people. I'm part of a group on a message board, and they're beyond. They're completely unreasonable. They're out of touch with reality. And what do I mean by that? They insist that the United States is going to, in Israel, they'll wipe out the Houthis, wipe them out. They haven't wiped out anything. They can't even wipe their own ass right now, it would appear. And that they're going to attack and destroy Iran's nuclear program. So they indulge this sort of military pornography, this vicious, violent fantasy that doesn't come to pass when in fact, Iran's not playing the game. And, it's actually the spillover effect. You're seeing it in southern Lebanon too. Hezbollah is intact. Remember, we were told, Syria, Assad's gone. Man, Hezbollah done. It's over, dude. No, that's not what happened. They're still largely intact. And it's Israel that's actually overextended. And then Israel's now talking about, we got to be prepared to fight Turkey. Their big buddies up north that is continuing to supply them oil for now. So the place is a mess. And Trump, I think Trump genuinely would like to see some order brought to it, but he doesn't have a clue yet. So that the clip we started with that you showed at the top of the show, that was just Trump thinking out loud. And once he gets a chance, I think, to really sit down and weigh the realities, there's a pragmatic side to him as well. He is not a blind ideologue.
Laurie, do you think that is he learning from the Biden administration, or has he learned from the experience of the Biden administration? Because the way that he's talking about forcing Egypt and Jordan in order to accept these people, Palestinians, into their land, is the same way that Antony Blinken was trying to do when this conflict started. They were putting tremendous amount of pressure on these two governments, especially on Egypt, to do that, but they couldn't achieve that. It seems that in the eyes of Trump, as he was talking about MBS and reducing the price of oil in order to put pressure on Russia, it seems he sees the same way on Egypt. He thinks that he can defeat the public opinion in Egypt because the government in Egypt is under pressure from the United States and from the public opinion. The question is which one would overcome, and it doesn't seem that the government at the end of the day would ignore the public opinion, which is hugely against Israel and the way that Israel is trying to treat Palestinians.
Yeah, look, the United States doesn't have enough money to buy off Sisi on this. And that, what Trump was, Trump's not the first one to suggest, well, why don't the Jordanians, the Egyptians take these pesky Palestinians? Well, it reflects ignorance on the part of the American public that believe that, without any understanding or appreciation about what that land means to those people, what being in that particular area. Now, look, it's it's not great in terms of geography, in terms of physical features. It's not like you got the mountains of Hawaii coming up against the ocean and this, deep blue ocean, just beautiful. It's got some nastiness to it, but it is invested with centuries, literally centuries of these people, their families, their grandfathers and grandmothers, their great-grandfathers, great-grandmothers, ancestors, generations of ancestors born and died in that area. And so they're not going to walk away from it. And there is, within the Palestinians, they hold a different view of, let's call it, relationships with family and with extended family and with ancestors and with heritage than your average American. I mean, the average American is not really tied to any particular piece of land, or because we don't have a long history here. I mean, my ancestors showed up here 400 years ago, so that's something. But we didn't settle in just one place and stay there and say this is our land. Palestinians, that's their land, and no international organization, no amount of money is going to buy them off. I mean, that's what we're witnessing today is so remarkable, that after 15 months of outright murder by the Israelis, the Palestinians are saying, we're heading back. We're heading back north. They're going to reoccupy. There's not going to be an unemployment problem in Palestine, in Gaza, for years to come. And while that's going on, though, the Israel is stepping up its attacks in the West Bank. And so the fighting's escalating there. Israel, I've said it all along since the beginning, Israel cannot fight its way out of this. It can't kill its way to peace. It's going to have to sit down and actually negotiate with the Palestinian people. The problem is the Palestinian Authority is just a corrupted, compromised institution. It won't be the one that comes up with a solution.
Did you see the pictures from Gaza, from the northern? People are getting back to the northern part of Gaza, and you see these forces, Hamas forces, Al-Qassam Brigade, and with the new arms, not from Russia, Iran, or any other country, but they captured these arms from Israelis.
Yeah.
There were a lot of forces in those pictures, and how they're gonna. This is Hamas. Larry, we were talking about for more than a year, we were talking about the situation in Gaza and how Israel destroyed literally everything in Gaza. But you see these people coming back, and the way that we're seeing the pictures.
Well, in fact, if you've watched, I've read some of the Israeli media on this, and what they're saying is saying, see, these guys, they hide themselves as civilians, so that's why we got to kill all these civilians. I mean, they're using it to justify genocide. And, people think, oh, well, I get particularly irritated with some of my fellow American citizens who will say, oh, that's an issue. How dare Hamas do that? I go, guys, read your damn history. That was my ancestors fighting the British, fighting the colonial empire. We were civilians. They were militia. So, they didn't go sign up and have to, get like a union card or for the Screen Actors Guild. No. Yeah, they are intertwined with the civilians because they're fighting for the rights of those Palestinian people. So, again, it's just one more example of the Israelis don't get it, the majority. But it is important to note, though, that there are several Jewish individuals and organizations that are in sync with the Palestinians about, they need to have their homeland. They need to be free.
Here is the video that you've mentioned, Larry, about.
مرحبا. شكرا لكتاب القسام على كل المعاملة الكويسة. شكرا للأكل والشرب والملابس. شكرا للشباب اللي كانوا يحفظوا علينا ودير بالو علينا من كاسف. وإن شاء الله يكون الكل يوم سعيد وأحسن يوم وكلنا نكون بخير.
يوم 25/1/25.
Yeah, here is what Jerusalem Post reported, Larry, before going to your point. It says Hamas altered hostages' appearance before releasing them.
Yeah. Hey, we're going to put makeup on them and say, I'm so happy. Please. The shukran, shukran, thank you, in Arabic, they were, those were sincere expressions. And to try, the propagandists in the West and in Tel Aviv are keen on trying to paint it as something other than what it was. It was legitimate. They were, look, I'm not saying they enjoyed that it was club fed or, it wasn't a vacation stay, Airbnb. But, this is a little off topic, but it illustrates, there's a commercial now in the United States for Airbnb, where you can go on and rent a home from a private individual. And there's this legendary football coach. And he was, Alabama's football coach. And so when the family shows up at the house, he basically sits them down and says, okay, now there's no fun. You don't get to enjoy yourself. You only get to take 5 minutes shower. It just goes down this whole list of very draconian things. Okay, so this wasn't that kind of vacation for these women. They were taken hostage. They were taken against their will. Now, why did that happen? Well, for every single Israeli that was taken hostage, the Israelis are taking hostages, but they don't call them hostages, and the West doesn't call them hostages. They're prisoners, implying that they have committed a crime. And Israel just throws them into jail. Now, a few of them get presented with charges and convicted, but the vast majority are not. And this is inhumane. And Israel doesn't treat them as human beings. It treats them as subhumans, Untermensch. Israel treats them like the Nazis and Ukrainian guards and Polish guards treated the Jews in Auschwitz. Again, coming back to the commemoration of today. And so, just a complete difference. And that's why Hamas took these hostages, to get leverage, to get some of the people. And they're, it's happening. They are getting 200-300 prisoners released, hostages, Palestinian hostages released for every Israeli. For these 4 girls, I guess there's like 300 Palestinians released. So, I'm not saying that it's right that Hamas does that. It's certainly not right that the Zionists do it. But it's a reality, and that's why it's happening.
One of the points, Larry, that last time we talked, I played a clip of the Vice President of Iran, Javad Zarif, in which he was telling us, he was saying that the main reason of what's going on in what's going on between Iran and Israel is not specifically about Iran and Israel. It's all about what's going on in Gaza.
Yes.
And the situation in Gaza is totally isolated from what's going on between Iran and Israel. And Iran and Israel, let's put it this way. Syria, the situation in Syria, Assad is gone. Is the cause of the Palestinian people gone? It's still there.
Yeah. Yeah.
If the reason that he was talking this way, Larry, he said that you don't have to look at Iran to find the solution in Iran. The solution is in Gaza, is with the people of Gaza. You have to find a solution for that region. And here is, as we know, as you mentioned, Iran is going to negotiate. I don't know. I do believe that they're going to negotiate with Donald Trump in the near future, or they're negotiating right now as we talk.
Yeah.
But that doesn't solve the situation there. There is a permanent conflict in that region that should be addressed by the Trump administration. Do you really that they're thinking of finding a permanent solution for Gaza, or they're just right now thinking of forcing Arab states, Syria, Lebanon, isolating them, isolating Iran, and making a deal with Iran to make them to convince them not to help Gazans? But at the end of the day, it doesn't matter with what's going on in Gaza.
Well, look, the Islamic Republic of Iran didn't exist in 1970 or 1973 or 1967. Or going back to 1948, it didn't exist. So the fight of the Palestinian people that began really with the Nakba, after Israel was, carved out by the United Nations, by the colonial powers, and the Zionists were granted this sliver of land. That's not Iran's doing. Iran's not the one that has. It's not like Iran is an instigator or facilitator of Palestinian violence, of Palestinian outrage. The Palestinians are their own people. They know what they've been up against, what they've been fighting against. And I guarantee you that if the average American endured what the Palestinian people have been subjected to, you'd see a revolution here. In fact, in a way, you have seen a revolution against the establishment by the support for Donald Trump and his significant victory. There was a real reaction. The deep state here in the United States is just terrified. So, Sharif was, he was spot on, saying, look, the animus that Israel has towards Iran, this obsession about we can't let those Islamists have a nuclear bomb. Well, still, there's no indication yet that Iran is A, building one, but B, the impetus for Iran to consider building one comes from Israel itself in its militaristic and its inhuman attacks on not just Iran, but groups that Iran supports. And you don't see the West having a meltdown over an Islamic nation with nuclear weapons, because you got Pakistan. Nobody fell on the fainting couch over that. So it is, it's really such a bizarre problem, how it's conceptualized and presented in the West. And, again, that Iran becomes the source of all evil, when in fact, Iran makes a very good case. I can help them make the case that they've been victims of terrorism by both the United States and Israel over the last, 30 years. If we want to, if we're all about fighting terrorism, we've got to stop the scourge of terrorism. Well, maybe we should stop funding, training, arming, equipping terrorists, which we, the United States, have been doing.
Here is what, Larry, I think there is a very important point in what you said, and here is what Tulsi Gabbard is talking about Turkey.
Yeah, I saw that.
Yeah.
Hilarious.
Is not our friend. He's one of the most dangerous dictators in the world, and the United States government and media have no business helping this Islamist megalomaniac and his al-Qaeda partners. Turkey's been supporting ISIS and al-Qaeda terrorists from behind the scenes for years.
She's raising a very important point, Larry. The support to these groups, these Wahhabi groups, Al Qaeda, ISIS, they were helping these people. And right now we have a government in Syria, which is
Wait. We, the United States, have been helping them, for God's sake. I mean, that I like Tulsi. I think Tulsi would be a great improvement over what was there before. However, that was the stupidest damn thing I've heard of late. You know, because all Erdogan's got to turn around and say, "What? You guys don't? You apparently you didn't get the memo, Tulsi. It was too top secret for you. Your buddies in the United States have been working with us on this for a long while. You know, I mentioned it before in one of our previous conversations. The whole Benghazi affair. That during that Benghazi was set up. It was a joint joint effort in Libya between the CIA and British MI6. The Brits were basically they collected operatives that were dispatched to go out and scoop up weapons like surface-to-air missiles. I know one guy in particular that came to us for help. You know, because he thought he was a CIA undercover operative. Nah, the Brits had recruited him. But then those weapons found their way to Benghazi. And that's the reason you had all these people there in Benghazi at that CIA station. They weren't just collecting intelligence and, doing crossword puzzles. Those weapons were being collected, packaged up, and then shipped to Turkey. And then Turkey was turning around and giving them out to these Islamists, the Al-Qaeda types, the ISIS, the Al-Nusras, the Hayat Tahrir al-Shams, as it is the latest iteration. And it was David Petraeus on, I think it was September 4th, 2012, who went to Turkey, to Ankara, to visit with Erdogan's folks and with his intelligence counterparts, and said, "Hey, we gotta put a temporary halt right now on the shipment of these weapons," because Obama was worried it was going to create an issue for him in his reelection campaign, and that's why Ambassador Chris Stevens, then went to Benghazi. It was described as a consulate. It wasn't a consulate. It was just a house that the Stevens was staying at to go try to. He met literally on September 10th with the Turkish diplomat. Why was he meeting with him? To talk about, hey, where can you get some good Turkish coffee here in Libya? No. They were discussing how to shut down and make sure that those shipment, what weapons were in the pipeline, went through, and then that was it. And then the attack came the next day in Benghazi, and Stevens wound up dead. So, Tulsi, before you get out there talking this kind of nuttiness, yeah, Erdogan's a problem, but we're part of that problem. I'm a big believer in don't go out trying to fix everybody else until you got your own house in order. And the United States is in no position to go lecture anybody about anything as long as we're engaged with the kinds of activities and operations that we are. We need to look in the mirror, cease and desist, and fix ourselves.
Actually, if you remember that email that Jake Sullivan sent to Hillary Clinton that says Al Qaeda is on our side in Syria.
Yeah, just crazy stuff. But that's, what's interesting is, again, I don't think Tulsi just started lashing out at Turkey on her own. Okay, she got some encouragement, support from Trump to do this. So Trump sending a signal to Erdogan, and Erdogan's he's got his own problems now. The whole Turkey thing's not going well, and I think part of the reason you're seeing Tulsi speak out, and it goes back to the Kurds, that Turkey sees the PKK and the Syrian Defense Force, I guess it is, as this terrorist threat that they want to destroy, and the United States has been backing them. So there's no clear dividing line between who's got the white hat on, who's got the black hat on here, is what I'm saying.
And what's in their mind, in your opinion, when it comes to Turkey? I don't see any sort of conflict directly between the United States and Turkey in Syria.
No. I don't know. It's possible out with if Turkish forces come into areas where U.S. troops are occupying right now, there is always that possibility. So yeah, that could happen. It is sort of crazy. What's so bizarre about this? Because she's calling Turkey this Islamist power. Well, I've been through the international airport in Istanbul, just outside of Istanbul, 3 times over the last year. Boy, if that's an Islamist, that's an example of Islam and Islamist tendencies, give me more. Place is amazing. So they have built the Turks have built a phenomenal airport, and it is an incredible operation. In the main hall, it's under Western. I call it's under Western control because McDonald's, Burger King, Shake Shack, Slim Chicken, Kentucky Fried Chicken, Taco Bell, every fast food restaurant of note in the United States is there. As well as, you got a lot of local Turkish offerings. And I mean, it's just, it's incredible. So this tirade by Tulsi, it's really odd, because you got to step back and say, okay, what's driving this? And I think part of what may be driving it is sending, again, Erdogan a message to sort of back off and leave the Kurds alone.
And how about the government in Syria? Do they see that the government in Turkey has some sort of leverage on the HTS and these people, Al-Jolani, in power in Syria? That's
what government in Syria? Yeah. Oh, you mean the Jelani crowd? You mean the Hayat Tahrir al-Sham crowd? You mean all of the foreign fighters, the mercenaries, who are now dressed up as, as I've always called them, the queer eye for the straight guy. They're masquerading as Islamic homosexuals, I guess. Shave their beards, put on suits. Meanwhile, quietly go about killing Alawites and Christians. I don't have enough insight to know who's actually providing the money for this. Is it the United States? Is it the Brits? Brits don't have a lot of money to provide. Is it Turkey? Is it Mohammed bin Salman? Somebody's pumping the money into this so that allows them to indulge this sort of fantasy government. But they're certainly not securing Turkey and making it a place of normal, where life goes on as normal.
It seems that, Larry, what has happened in Syria, despite what we talk about, that it's gonna be a pain in the neck of Israel for many years to come, if not forever.
Yeah. If there's something to be said for having an established order, because at least within an established order, you know what sort of where the vulnerable points of vulnerability are, where the points of power are, what leverage, where you can work that. When you have something like this government, cobbled together government of HTS, you sort of have to start all over trying to reconfigure how do we develop relationships. You know, the Israelis, I believe, based upon what I've read and heard, have been very effective at penetrating Bashar al-Assad's government. And so they had key intelligence assets in the military and also in the intelligence service, security service. Well, a lot of those folks are now gone. They're not welcome around HTS. So that means the Israelis have to go back in and forge new ties. Maybe they will. But it is, I never rule out the possibility that these HTS folks, they have their own agenda. They have their own goals. And those may not coincide with that of Israel.
Right now in Lebanon, Larry, despite what has happened, the ceasefire, it seems that the Israelis don't want to leave Lebanon. What's going on? People are just going to their homes and their land, but Israelis are not leaving the southern Lebanon.
Well, yeah,
What's going on?
they're violating the agreement. I mean, they're supposed to withdraw, but it's also highlighting the fact that the entirety of this agreement was in a way supposed to strengthen the government of Lebanon and strengthen them against Hezbollah. It's now looks like having the opposite effect. That it's showing the weakness of the government and the strength of Hezbollah. And Israel does not have the logistics and the military force to sustain operations there in southern Lebanon and in the Golan and in the West Bank. That's why, they're pulling out of the key locations in Gaza. So those troops are going to get redeployed, but that, freeing up those reserves to be able to reinforce, send them elsewhere doesn't eliminate the broader problem that the Israeli military faces, that it's a reserve force, and the fighting they are not equipped to fight a protracted war like Russia is in Ukraine. These guys, the Israelis are good for a one-night stand. They can do the quick operations. Don't ask them to sustain, because they have problems on the sustainment front. So this, they're going to try to, the longer they try to hang on in Lebanon, actually, the more it strengthens the position of Hezbollah.
I think that when we look at the conflict in Ukraine, the war in Ukraine, in the eyes of the West, the United States, together even with Israel, they see a totally different sort of conflict, war. The manner they're fighting each other is totally different from what we've seen in Iraq and Afghanistan, which was the main training apparatus for Israelis, and because the mindset of fighting these people in the Middle East is totally different from what has happened in Russia, in Ukraine, between Russia and Ukraine.
Right.
Is that gonna, and on the other hand, Hamas was fighting the way, as you mentioned so far, the way that Israelis were not able to defeat them. Is that gonna, let's put it this way, what was the outcome of the conflict in Ukraine, of the war in Ukraine, that could have been influenced the situation in the Middle East in terms of these forces fighting each other?
Well, one thing you've not seen in Gaza that you see on a daily basis across the Ukrainian front are the use of FPV drones, and these drones used as attacking forces. So they use both to collect intelligence as well as to destroy fortifications, personnel, vehicles. I'm really sort of surprised, actually, that we haven't seen that by the Israelis. And I don't know why, because I believe that they've got the ability to do it, but they haven't. If they started doing that might have actually had more of a decisive effect, because the smaller drones can actually fly into tunnels. We've seen like in Ukraine, the Russians, there are like these sewer pipes where Ukrainian soldiers are hiding in them. Drones fly right in there and blow up, or they fly into the back of vehicles. So that's one thing we've not seen the Israelis try, and I don't know if it is, lack of resources, lack of, vehicles. I don't know what it is.
Maybe because of the main goal of Israelis in Gaza, they wanted to destroy everything, which wasn't the case for Russians. They wanted to fight Ukrainians.
That's an excellent. You're a smart person, Nima. You're here showing off. Yeah, no, that's exactly right. The Israeli approach was genocide. The Russian approach is not genocide. The Russian approach is they want to demilitarize, but they're not going to kill, mounds and mounds of civilians to accomplish that. And yet the ones killing the civilians in the Ukraine conflict are the Ukrainians.
Larry, when it comes to the conflict in Ukraine, do you see that Donald Trump is going to offer an acceptable proposal to Putin?
No. Oh, absolutely not. That's the problem right now. The assumptions that Donald Trump holds with respect to the situation for the Russian government in Ukraine are completely false. He believes that Russia's suffering horrendous casualties. Good Lord, the Ukrainians are killing them right and left. Now, Ukraine's lost a lot, but Russia's lost more. No, that's not the case, Mr. President. Russia's economy's in tatters. It's savaged by inflation. That it's teetering on the brink of collapse. So Trump takes that information because he believes it. I offered, my belief that, well, it's not belief. We have Bill Burns, the former CIA director under Biden. That's what the CIA was telling Trump, and Trump has believed it. But when you start with those assumptions, I could see Trump saying, "Oh yeah, as I look at this, I believe that Russia's really they can't sustain losses like this anymore, and their economy's teetering. Yeah, they'll make a deal. I'll bully them into it." But when those assumptions are false, Vladimir Putin's sitting there looking and saying, we've suffered losses, and the soldiers are mourned. They're heroes of Russia, the motherland. But we're killing 10 Ukrainians for every one of us that die. I mean, just the other day there was the Israelis and Ukrainians traded bodies of dead soldiers. For every single Russian returned to Russia,
You mean Russian and Ukrainians?
Yeah, Russian and Ukrainians. Sorry, for every single one that the Russians turned over to the Ukrainians got 15 back. 15 to 1. That's a horrific number. So, Russia holds the cards in this negotiation, and unfortunately, some of those same Zionist characters I described, they're weighing in on this stuff too, and they believe, Putin has to negotiate. Putin doesn't have to do a damn thing. Putin's not going to be bullied, not going to be coerced, and they're certainly not going to go out and just agree to any temporary ceasefire or halt in the fighting. They've got the Ukrainians on the run now. Ukraine is completely on its back heels and doesn't have any way to turn this around. Just over the weekend, Velikia Novosilka, which was a key logistics center, that is completely under control of Russia. Chasiv Yar is almost completely under control. Toretsk under control. So after this, there's really only one big remaining population center in the western Donetsk that bumps up against the border with Dnipropetrovsk. And then once they're done, once that goes, the road is open to the Dnieper River, to Dnipropetrovsk. The war is going in Russia's favor, and it's going against Ukraine's favor, and therefore Trump has no leverage. He thinks he's got, he genuinely believes that he's got some leverage over the Russians. He doesn't. We're going to impose tariffs. Russia will go, okay, we're selling you uranium. You need uranium. You're like the diabetic that needs that insulin injection every day. And so this is sort of like what it is. The United States is the diabetic. And we're going to the supplier of the insulin. By God, you do what we say, or we're going to charge you 25% more for the insulin that we pay for. And so they go, okay, go ahead and pay more. I don't care, because you still got to buy what I have. So when you're jacking that price up, you're the one that's going to suffer. That's exactly what what Trump's talking about here. A self-inflicted wound. Not smart, but it goes back. He's getting some bad information, and he's not thinking critically about this yet. Maybe he will.
It seems that, Larry, in a closed meeting that took place in the Verkhovna Rada in Ukraine, the head of Ukrainian intelligence, Budanov, said that Ukraine may cease to exist if serious negotiations do not take place before summer. And do you think that these sort of leaks coming from Ukraine are getting to Donald Trump?
Yes. Yeah. Now, there was a leak yesterday out of Ukraine claiming it was Trump's peace plan. And, very elaborate. But again, the false assumptions. You always got to look at what do we assume are the basic principles. And within that, the assumption was that Russia's army is failing and that the Ukrainians can rapidly rebuild and challenge Russia. No, it can't. And that's one thing Russia's going to make certain doesn't happen. The agreement that will conclude this war will include prohibitions upon any kind of military that Ukraine has had being, reconstituted. Russia's not going to allow this threat to reemerge. That's simple.
Yeah. Here is, Larry, when you look at the way that European Union is trying to understand the situation with Donald Trump, pressure coming from the United States and the conflict in Ukraine. Poland is saying that they're not going to let the Russian gas get to Germany again or get to Europe again. Yeah. How powerful is Poland? And the president of Poland, which stated this sort of, that the gas flow from Russia to Western Europe should never be restored. This is the way that he's talking. Who's this guy, and what type of leverage does he have to implement this sort of rhetoric on his part?
Well, he doesn't. He has limited power. You're talking about Donald Tusk. This this highlights why the real problem that NATO faces. It's not, we kept hearing under Joe Biden how unified NATO was. They're not unified at all. Tusk is threatening, Poland's threatening Hungary, and with sanctions and with, punishment. And then to come out and say this, look at what's the German economy is in crisis. And the economic crisis is generating support for parties like AfD, the AfD party, the Alternative for Deutschland in Germany, that previously wasn't there. And that economic chaos is not confined to Germany. It's in the United Kingdom. It's in France. And in places like Austria, Slovakia, Romania now, you've seen the pushback against this, World Economic Forum vision for Europe, and that it's flowing more towards nationalists, people opposed to that, and people who are not interested in going to war with Russia. So, Tusk popping off like this is just one more example of activities that are going to fracture Europe, not bring them together.
Yeah, what's so important, and it doesn't seem to be understandable on the part of Europeans together with the United States, Larry, that whenever, I don't know if you heard that Churchill says there is no endless friendship and enmity. It's all about the common interest, endless common interest. That Here is the way that Russia has partnership with China right now with Iran. They're not allies, but they have partners somehow beyond alliance. But they don't commit to everything. They don't force themselves to do everything for each other. But they know here. But on the other hand, when you look at G7 comparing to BRICS, look at NATO, it's all about making boundaries just to limit these countries. As you've mentioned in Germany with AfD, they want to be German. Italians want to be Italian. They don't want to be the same identity applying to each and everybody in Europe.
I agree. Yeah, no, many in the West, I think this is something that's also important for people that are listening to you or watching you to understand that with the incoming Trump administration, there are several, particularly this new, he'll be he's a senior official designated, Elbridge Colby at the Department of Defense. And Colby's big thing is China, dealing with China. And there's the notion that the United States is, on the one hand, we're going to oppose Russia and defeat Russia and Ukraine. But on the other hand, we want to develop relationships with Russia to split Russia off from China. Because the fact of the matter is that U.S. policy for 50 years is predicated on keeping China and Russia apart. Well, now they're together. And while they haven't signed a mutual defense treaty, it is, I would argue that they have a de facto mutual defense treaty in place. That their cooperation is not just economic, but it is also military. It's also political. And the Chinese have they have a different approach than the Russians. I mean, they're just culturally different. But the friendship that has been established between Putin and Xi, I think, is genuine, and they are serious about working together to thwart the ambitions of the United States as a hegemon. That was why, a week ago Monday, so a week ago this time, we were looking at Donald Trump being sworn into office. Man, seems like that's like ages ago. And that night, at about 9 p.m., 8 p.m. Washington time, Trump held that impromptu news conference in the Oval Office. Well, so that's 8 p.m. in D.C. is 8 a.m. in Beijing, and there was 4 a.m. in the morning in Russia. However, somewhere 4 or 5 hours later, at about say 8, 9 a.m. Russian time, Putin and Xi get on a Zoom call like we are, and they're talking like you and I are, and they went through. Xi's telling Putin, yeah, hey, Trump called up and, funny guy. Let me tell you what he said, and told him what he said. And, they're sharing information back and forth. But it was, just a reminder, they're going to coordinate. They recognize that if they start, if the United States divides them and tries to pit them against each other, that they're going to be vulnerable to U.S. subversion. They recognize that the United States is out of control when it comes to trying to subvert other governments.
Yeah. One of the reasons, Larry, that I've mentioned AfD, many people are saying that AfD is the far right and this and that, but we have to accept that they are so tired of the European Union.
Mm-hmm.
They don't want to be under these people, this organization called the European Union. They want to make their own decisions, their own policies, and because so far with what has happened to Germany, if they go in that direction that the Green Party brought to Germany, they're not going to survive.
Right.
They're gonna die in the near future, and there has to be some sort of change in Europe. What could be the alternative? We have the left, we have the right, but there could be a common ground for both parties to work with each other in favor of the German people, for example.
Well, I'm not sure anymore what these terms left and right are tossed about. What is AfD specific policies that make it right wing? Sort of are we talking about, we have a belief in racial purity, even if there was such a thing, but, that only people who share certain physical characteristics can be welcomed into government and treated fairly. And if you'd have other physical characteristics or ethnic heritage, you'd be mistreated. Is that right wing? Well, we've seen left-wing, so-called left-wing regimes do that too. So again, that's where I come back and say, I think we ought to sit down and define, what do we mean? What are they talking about? If restricting the flow of immigration into one's country and requiring that people have a visa approved in advance, if that's right wing, well, okay, yeah, I'm a right winger. If you believe that the rule of law should be applied fairly and equally without worrying about someone's social status or economic or political ties, is that right wing? If so, yeah, I embrace, so my point is, I'm not sure what all these terms mean. What we do know is that the prevailing model of this woke nonsense, which says, there's no such thing as just male and female. Man, we got multiple genders. We got so many we can't even count them. And that, we need to have green energy as opposed to, fossil fuels, and that anybody that wants fossil fuels is a troglodyte. They're failing. Their policies have failed, and they brought economic havoc on the people of Germany. And people are losing jobs, standard of living's going down, factories are relocating, all because of the Green Party was allowed finally to get into office and try to implement its madness. And at the same time, at one point you thought that they were anti-war. Hell no, man. The war. What's it good for? To make us more money. Absolutely. That's what they're doing.
Just to wrap up this session, Larry, do you think that if we, from what we've seen from the first administration of Donald Trump, can we surely say that he's not gonna start a new war, a new conflict?
Not intentionally. I think he genuinely wants to avoid sending people to war. And candidly, if he does that, if he sends troops to Panama or sends troops to Greenland, he is going to be creating some real problems for himself with his political base, because they're sick and tired of war. Absolutely. Want no more of it. So if Trump holds to his promise to not get the United States involved in these meaningless foreign wars, then he'll do okay. If he goes back, reneges on that promise, his presidency will be an utter failure.
The way that he's putting tariffs on Colombia, is that going to help him, or is that going to maybe unite Colombia with Cuba, I don't know, with Venezuela and other countries against Donald Trump?
Well, now he says he's not going to impose them because, for people that don't know what happened, the United States had at least 2 plane loads, military plane loads of illegal migrants that had been arrested and were being deported. And several of them were Colombian, so they're being deported back to Colombia. And the president of Colombia refused to let the planes land. Hell no. So Trump said, okay, we're imposing 25% tariffs, and we're going to impose other sanctions on Colombian officials, and we're pulling your visas, and you're not coming to the United States. And if this doesn't, we'll go up to 50%. Well, actually, Colombia is in no position to fight the United States on that. And so reportedly the Colombian president, in a face-saving gesture, while going on and, criticizing Trump by name and defying, we're not going to surrender to you, he sent his Colombian aircraft to the United States to pick up the migrants and bring them back. So all Trump wanted was to get rid of the illegal migrants. He didn't care how they got out of the country, just as long as they go. And so once the Colombian president did that, Trump said, okay, well, we'll hold off on those 25% tariff. Now, Trump can get away with that with Colombia because we've got leverage over Colombia. Can't do that. My fear is he sees the effectiveness of that with Colombia, and then he says, I'll do the same thing to Russia. It won't work with Russia or with China, for that matter.
Larry, do you think that the new Secretary of Defense would be able to modify the things the way that Donald Trump wants to be?
No. Pete Hegseth is he's not an independent thinker on this. He's there to carry out Donald Trump's orders. I don't know Pete Hegseth. My own personal view is he's way too young and way too inexperienced to hold that job. We'll see if I'm wrong. He could turn out to be a boy genius. But one thing is certain, he's there not to pursue his own agenda. He's not on the payroll of some military industrialist. He's there to serve Donald Trump and the American people, and to root out the whole diversity, equity, inclusion forces that have really emasculated the Department of Defense.
That could be the outcome of his first administration, that he's experiencing in his first administration, dealing with Rex Tillerson, John Bolton, and these people who were so much powerful in their sort of thinking.
Yeah.
and he couldn't reshape their sort of thinking. That's why these people, these young people, can be advantageous for Donald Trump's position.
Right. Right. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Larry, for being with us today.
Very insightful. I'm glad I've got the week started, and we'll see what happens by the end of the week. The Donald Trump show is rolling along full blast. We're going to have some more entertaining things develop, I think.
We're going to have 4 years of fun with Donald Trump.
So let's give them something to talk about, right?
Yeah.
All right,
Thank you,
Nima.
Larry.
Thank
See
you, my friend. Bye-bye.
See you. Bye-bye.